Hi, we're back now at Studio Q, and joining me we have Tim Wright from the Democrats and Richard Di Natale from the Greens, and we're going to talk a little bit about how the forum went. So I think I'll start with you, Richard. How do you think the forum went? What was your impression of it?
Well, few surprises. The Greens and the Democrats, I thought, obviously gave the best presentation, standout performances from the Greens and the Democrats in terms of standing up loudly and proudly for the rights of GLBTI people. Labor Party was, again, missing in action. And the Liberals, well, I don't really need to say much about the Liberals. They've been missing in action for about 10 years, I think.
No. Well, we both know, as Richard said, that your two parties both have pretty good policies for gays and lesbians. So what I thought we might do today is look at how you got where you are, why you chose, Richard, to be a Green rather than a Democrat. What was it about the Green philosophy that appealed to you?
Well, I suppose my background would have been probably a more traditional Labor background, working class family, northern suburbs, migrant family. But I think over a number of years I saw the Labor Party move increasingly towards the right and become more and more similar to the Liberal Party, and there didn't seem to be really anywhere to go except for progressive parties, and the Greens at the time were, to my mind, the most progressive party. They spoke passionately about things that I care about, the environment, Indigenous issues. I was working as a medical practitioner in the Northern Territory for an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation. Of course, Bob Brown, pretty inspirational leader, somebody who has always stood up for, really on principle, and never been the sort of politician who sniffs what public opinion's doing. He speaks from the heart. He speaks about the things he believes to be right. And so I suppose all of those things together meant that I found a really good home in the Greens, and I'm really, really proud to be representing our policies.
But Tim, you found a home in the Democrats. Now, a lot of people in your generation, particularly among gays and lesbians, are migrating to the Greens, but you ended up with the Democrats. How come you got there?
Well, I think the gay rights issues were quite a big deciding factor for me, or more generally the social justice issues. And it's not just about the party's policies, it's about how the party goes about implementing those policies in the Parliament. And I think that the Australian Democrats have a really strong track record on gay rights and using the parliamentary system to advance the cause. And I think that if you're elected to Parliament, you really have to use the committee system, you have to propose amendments, it's a privileged position, and I think that the Democrats have done that much better than the Greens. Even though our policies are much the same on gay rights, it's about how we actually go about getting those policies into effect.
Richard talked a bit about his background, about being a doctor, working in the Northern Territory, the migrant family and all that. What's your background?
I grew up in Barwon Heads on the coast, and there wasn't much opportunity for political activism, but I became more politically active at university. So I moved to Melbourne a few years ago, and I've been studying law at Melbourne University. And more recently, I've been working on anti-nuclear issues in Africa.
You're involved with the Peace Foundation,
Yeah, the Peace Organisation of Australia, and also the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. But currently I'm working as a staffer for Senator Lynn Allison, who's the Democrats' leader. And
she seems to have a lot of staffers.
No, surprisingly few compared with some of the other politicians, the ministers and whatnot. I think there are five of us.
Right.
But this year she's been doing a lot of work on same-sex entitlements, and I've been in charge of that area of her work.
Right. Now, it's often been said that we're not going to get anything much out of the Liberals, as you pointed out. It doesn't sound like we're going to get anything in a hurry out of the Labour Party, so the best hope for gay rights in this election is going to be if we get Democrats and Greens into a position to hold the balance of power in the Senate. Now, that involves some slightly complicated thinking and voting, I think. Are you finding that when you're out on the stump, Richard, are you finding that people understand the voting system and what they need to do to get the balance of power back to the minor parties and away from the majors?
Look, it's a really confusing system to a lot of people, and I think it's probably one of the biggest obstacles to actually breaking the two-party duopoly that we've got at the moment. People don't realise that in the lower house, if they vote for a minor party, if they vote 1 Green and 2 Labor, if that's their choice, that if that vote for the Greens and that Green candidate doesn't get elected, then that vote gets passed over to their second preference, if that be Labor. That vote goes across as a whole vote. And so they get the opportunity, if you like, to vote twice in the lower house. And many people don't understand that. They think that if they vote 1 Green, it may be a wasted vote. In the Senate, it's even more complicated because you've got above the line and below the line voting. And what happens with above the line voting is often they don't know where their preferences are going. And what happened at the last election was a lot of people voted Labor and didn't know that Labor was preferencing family first. And it's why we've got a family first senator elected at the moment.
Yeah. So, Tim, supposing they vote Democrats won in the upper house, where are their preferences going?
Their preferences go straight to the Greens. We did a preference deal because our parties are like-minded on issues like gay rights. And then they go to other like-minded micro-parties, such
like
as
What Women Want.
Carers Alliance, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a whole lot of them. And then we place Labor and Liberal somewhere about halfway down, and then all of those really obnoxious, disgusting parties like Family First,
Citizens Electoral Council.
Yeah, those ones. It's a hard choice to make, which is the
which
worst
goes
evil
really at the
among
bottom
them.
of the pile. Yes.
I think we put One Nation at the very bottom.
And what about you, Richard?
Well, similar, although I have to just correct him on that. The Democrats in Victoria aren't going straight to the Greens. They're going to some smaller parties first and then coming to the Greens. But we are, in fact, going straight to the Democrats in Victoria. Again, some of the smaller parties, Climate Change Coalition, What Women Want, Labor and Liberal, and the right-wing parties. We have actually...
Okay.
We found it so difficult to split the Liberal Party and some of the nastier right-wing parties that we've put... Half of them we've put the Liberals last, and half of them we've put the some of those more extreme right-wing parties last.
Okay, so let's sum this one up. People can be reasonably confident if they vote above the line for either the Democrats or the Greens that they're going to get some kind of progressive outcome.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to be going to people like Family First, obviously, but you wouldn't expect it to.
Yes.
And so they can be reasonably confident about when they're giving preferences to you, where your preferences are
Absolutely.
going. If I can sum up for the lower house, if they vote 1 for either of you two, they can make their own minds up where they number from there.
That's right.
And if they, if they want, the second best to you they think is the coalition, they can vote 1 for you, 2 for the coalition.
I mean, we
or
direct
whatever.
preferences with how to vote cards.
Yes, but they don't have to follow a how to vote card, do
No.
they? Yeah, you can make your own mind up.
I mean,
That's
but the
exactly
same-
right,
the
and I
same's
think
the
that's
case
the best
for the
thing to do. I think, to be frank, I think the system needs a big overhaul, and I'd like to see that the sort of power was taken away from political parties who recommend preferences, and particularly in the Senate, where most people vote above the line. They're trusting political parties with all the behind-the-scenes wheeling and dealing. That system needs to be overhauled, and we've got to basically put it back in the hands of voters so that they determine their preferences and not political parties.
So why are you directing preferences why are you handing out how to vote cards for the House of Reps that direct preferences?
Well, that's because that's the system we're stuck with at the
No,
moment.
but you're not required to do that. You could just hand out a how to vote card saying vote 1 Greens.
And
Surely
then
there's nothing in the Electoral Act that would prevent you from doing that.
No, the problem is if you don't direct preferences in the lower house, if you don't make a recommendation, you get a much higher informal vote, and that's the problem you're stuck with.
Yes, and also basically, let's be frank, some people want to be taught how to think, and they want to be taught
Exactly
how to vote.
right. Yes.
As someone once said to me, I can't vote below the line in the Senate, it will be too late for the trip to IKEA, and my boyfriend won't wait for me. So, ideally, of course, you vote below the line in the Senate as well, but that means that means putting a number in what? How many boxes?
70 odd boxes.
68
Yeah.
this election, and there's quite a chance that you could make a mistake,
Yeah,
and
because
therefore
if
your vote's invalid.
Yeah,
so
and if you forget,
it's a risk.
You could put in 263s or 249s or something by mistake.
But you do it once every 3 years, so I reckon just spending an extra 5 minutes is probably worth the effort.
And presumably they can see details of where you're directing the Senate
Absolutely.
preferences if they want to
Absolutely.
on your respective websites.
But, I wouldn't recommend voting below the line because, a lot of us don't have much knowledge of what these macro parties are about, and we've entered into discussions with them to suss them out. So I think that you're quite safe voting above the line.
Okay, well, thank you guys for that. We'll wrap it up there. I'm Doug Pollard. I've been talking to Richard Di Natale for the Greens and Tim Wright for the Democrats. We did invite the other parties to take part, but unfortunately they haven't been able to. And that's it from Studio Q.